My sign language interpreter lifted her hands to translate, and the substitute immediately told her she was fired. I walked into third period with my sign language interpreter the same way I had nearly every day for years. But the substitute teacher's expression shifted the moment she saw us. Her smile vanished, her eyes narrowed, and she stared like something about our presence offended her. As she began speaking, my interpreter lifted her hands and translated her words to me without missing a beat. The substitute stopped mid-sentence. I wasn't informed there would be an aide in my classroom, she said coldly. My interpreter answered aloud while still signing so I could understand, explaining that she was assigned to me. The substitute muttered something under her breath about special treatment, loud enough for several students to hear. When class officially started, my interpreter continued signing the lesson as usual. A few minutes in, the substitute abruptly stopped talking and stared directly at us. The hand movements are distracting, she said. My interpreter hesitated for a fraction of a second before signing that sentence to me, her face tightening. Then the substitute went further. She accused me of not actually being deaf and claimed I was using my interpreter as an excuse to avoid doing work. My chest tightened as my interpreter stood up immediately. Her signing became faster and sharper as she firmly explained that this was a legally required accommodation protected under federal law and that the office could confirm it at any time. The substitute didn't hesitate. You're fired, she snapped. Get out of my classroom. My interpreter laughed once, disbelief written all over her face, then turned to me and signed her own words, not translating anyone else this time. She told me she didn't work for the substitute and that her job was to stay with me. She said she wasn't leaving. That's when the substitute stepped closer. She claimed she'd been teaching for 15 years and knew a scam when she saw one. She said kids fake disabilities all the time for extra time and attention and that she wasn't falling for it. My interpreter continued signing every word to me, even though I could see a vein throbbing in her neck. The substitute threatened to call security. She started counting out loud and said she'd physically drag my interpreter out if she had to. My interpreter turned fully toward me and signed calmly that everything would be okay and that she wasn't going anywhere no matter what happened. That seemed to push the substitute past her limit. She rushed forward and grabbed my interpreter's arm hard enough that the skin turned pale under her grip. My interpreter tried to sign that she was hurting her, but before she could finish, the substitute slammed her other hand down on my interpreter's fingers against the desk. One finger bent sideways at a horrifying angle. My interpreter let out a silent scream, collapsing against the desk and clutching her hand as tears streamed down her face. I sat frozen in my chair. The person who had been my voice and my connection to the world for 4 years was sobbing on the floor, and I had never felt so isolated in my life. The substitute turned toward me with a satisfied look and deliberately exaggerated her mouth movements so I could read every word. She said I could hear just fine when I wanted to and that she'd seen my type before. The classroom erupted. Students jumped out of their seats, shouting, gasping, yelling, none of it reachable to me. Desks scraped loudly. A boy near the back looked ready to throw his textbook. The substitute screamed for everyone to sit down, spittle flying from her mouth, but no one listened. Chaos filled the room while my interpreter cried on the floor and the world went completely silent for me. Then I noticed movement in the back corner. Bella was signing rapidly to me while holding up her phone so I could see the screen. She told me she had FaceTimed her mom the moment the substitute started yelling. Her mom worked for the school district and had been watching everything unfold. The substitute noticed the phone and shoved a desk aside, trying to get to Bella. 3 students immediately stepped in front of her. When she tried to push through them, one boy shoved her back hard enough that she nearly fell into another desk. Bella stood up slowly and turned the phone toward the substitute. A woman's furious face filled the screen. Another phone already pressed to her ear. I watched the substitute's face drain of color as recognition hit. The room went completely still. Without realizing it, the students had formed a loose circle around her. She tried to move toward the door, but 2 boys were already blocking it with crossed arms. Her mouth opened and closed as if searching for words that could undo the last few minutes, but none came. My interpreter pulled herself upright using a desk. Mascara streaked down her face. Injured hand held protectively to her chest. She walked straight up to the substitute until they were inches apart and spoke slowly and deliberately. I couldn't see her lips clearly, but whatever she said made the substitute stagger backward. When the principal arrived moments later, she found the substitute standing, frozen in the center of a classroom full of students who refused to move, and a sign language interpreter who never once abandoned her student.